I'm Mindy from EssentialsForHealthyLivingWithMindy.com, and today I'm going to be making some glycerin tinctures for my kids and my friends' kids. So I thought while I was doing this that I would put together a video to show you how to do it yourself, because I have questions about it a lot, and it's really very easy. It sounds intimidating, but it really isn't once you learn what you're doing. So the first thing you need to do is get all your supplies together. You need a big pot, like a Dutch oven or a stock pot. And then, of course, all your oils. All of your herbs. And I've got quite a few here in my glass containers that I store them in. And then you are going to need some food grade vegetable glycerin. And I get most of these supplies from bulkherbstore.com. And then you're going to need some distilled water and some canning jars to cook your tinctures in. So I'm going to get the rest of my supplies together, and then I will be right back to show you exactly how this is done. I'm back, and I have all my supplies, and so now I'm going to show you how to do one of my favorite herbal tinctures that we use a lot in this house whenever the kids are sick. So the first recipe is one that I got from the book. It's a small book called the ABC Herbal, which is one of my favorites. It's really good if you have kids. Now, this is called a children's activator, and the reason for that is because it activates your body's immune response and helps your body to fight off sickness. And this tincture is one that I rely on a lot whenever my kids are ill, or if I know for sure we've been exposed to something and we're trying to fight it off. So this has equal parts of the herb yarrow, elderflower, and peppermint. And so what I did was I pre-mixed it in just this little jar, and then I shake it up to get it all mixed together really well. And I have used this for things like even strep throat, when my kids have fevers, colds, flu, anything like that. But make sure, especially if you're new to herbs, that you have help available, or you work along with your doctor, because it's not good to take these things into your own hands until you're very experienced at using herbs. So I have all this together. Now today I'm going to make a big batch because I'm making some for my own family as well as my friend's family. So, and I want it to be enough to last both of us through the winter. So I'm going to be using a big jar, and I'm going to go ahead and just dump all of this in here, I think. And what you want to do is, depending on how much that you're using, you want to, because you can use less, you can use smaller jars, but you want to fill about a fourth full of the herb that you are using. And so I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more. I'm going to make this a nice strong, I'm going to go ahead and fill it up because I want this to be a good strong tincture. Now, so we've got that. That's the first step. Now you're going to take your distilled water. Always use distilled water when you're making tinctures. It will just really absorb all the nutrients better because it's an empty water, and it's hungry for the nutrients from the herbs. So the first thing I'm going to do is just put in some distilled water to moisten the herbs that I have in here. Then I'm going to take my glycerin, and I'm going to fill this jar up a little more than half full with the glycerin. And because that's settled on top of the herbs, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more. And then I'm going to fill it up the rest of the way with water. And because that glycerin is so thick, it doesn't really get down there into the herbs real well. So I'm going to go ahead and just shake this, get it all mixed up really well because we want it to all combine. Now it's all combined a little bit better, so I'm going to put just a tiny bit more water. You're going for about a 60-40 ratio, but keep it simple. It doesn't have to be exact, but you do want a little bit more glycerin than you have of water. And you're going to fill it up to about within an inch of the lid. And again, just mix it up together really good. So you've got that ready, and then we're going to put it in our pot. And now I'm going to go ahead and do one more tincture while I'm at it. And it's going to be just an elderberry tincture. Very simple, but elderberries are strongly antiviral. They're one of your best defenses against the flu and colds. They do a very effective job at fighting it off with none of the side effects of drugs that are out there. And there are very few drugs that do much of anything against viruses anyway. So this is elderberries. And again, I'm going to fill this up. It's a little more than halfway. We'll pour some back. Now, and then we're going to do the same thing again. And we are going to moisten it a little bit with our water. And then we're going to take our glycerin and fill it a little bit more than half full with the berries. It seeps in there a little bit better. And then I'm going to fill the rest of the way with my distilled water, leaving a little bit of room at the top. And what this does is it makes a really sweet tincture, and the glycerin is really good at preserving the herbs, because when you keep these dried herbs in your pantry, they're going to lose their potency over time, and then they are less effective. But when you preserve them in glycerin or alcohol, then you can keep them much longer. The glycerin tinctures typically last about 2 to 3 years in your pantry, as long as you keep them out of direct sunlight and in a somewhat cool place like your home would normally be. So now we've got them in the pot, and I'm going to fill this pot up with water, and I'm going to set it to boil. And I'll be back with you shortly. I'm back to show you the next step of this video. So what I've done, I went ahead and I put in another tincture in this pot just because I want to get more done at once. And so here's what I have going on. I labeled them, which is a good idea because you would be surprised how much they look alike after they get done. And if you're forgetful like me, you're going to need this. Now, I'm going to fill this up with water. You don't need a real tall pot because you're not going to go over the top. You're going to stop below the rim of the lid. So that's what you're going for. And if it's down a little bit lower, that's okay too. So we're going to fill it all the way up to here. Then I'm going to turn on my stove to medium heat, get it boiling, and then I'm going to turn it down to a simmer, and I'm going to let these simmer for about 2 to 3 hours. And if you're using an herb that is a root or a bark, then you're going to want to let it simmer a little bit longer because it takes a little bit longer to pull the nutrients out of a root or a bark. So just bear that in mind and add in at least another hour if the herb you're using is a root or a bark. And if you're wondering, how do you know? Usually it's going to say it when you buy the herb. It's going to say that it's the root or the bark, like wild cherry bark or dandelion root. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to boil it, turn it down to a simmer for 2 to 3 hours, and then I will come back with you for the next step after that. I'm back already, and it's because I forgot to tell you 2 things. First, when you cook this, you want to cook it uncovered, so don't worry about a lid. Secondly, because you're going to be simmering it for 2 or 3 hours, then occasionally try to remember to check the water level because you're going to need to add more water ever so often. So that's it. I'll see you in a bit. Hi there. Okay, so here's what I've been doing. I have my tinctures in the pot, and I've been simmering them for about 2.5 hours. So now I feel like they're ready to come out of the pot. So the next step is very easy and very basic. Here's what we do. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm just going to take each of these tinctures, and I'm going to carefully pull it out. Now look, that was clear when we started. Do you see the deep color of that liquid? That means that we have lots and lots of nutritional goodness in our tincture. So we're just going to set it over on a towel to dry. I actually have 2 towels there. I doubled up. But I said to dry. Actually, I meant let it cool. So it does have water dripping. That's part of the reason it's on a towel. And here's my this is the elderberry. Look how deep that color is. So now I've got them sitting here on these towels to cool, and so it's going to take quite a few hours for them to get cool. Occasionally I'll even let them sit overnight, but I don't let them ever sit any longer than that. So I'll come back to you when these are cool and I'm ready to finish up with them. Thanks. Well, I'm back for the final step in making these tinctures. So let me show you just how easy it is to finish it up, okay? So now I've got, these are my 3 tinctures that I made up, and they've all had a few hours to cool. So I'm going to show you the one that I gave you the recipe for, which is the activator. And all you're going to do at this point is you're just going to strain out the herbs and put it into a bottle. I'm going to start by straining it into this mason jar. And in this particular one, you can see the dried herbs kind of floated to the top. But I take a minute just to press out any liquid in them because I don't want to let any of this go to waste. So start by doing that, and then after I get the big bulk of the plant material off the top, then I'll start carefully pouring it through here and finishing up straining. And then what I'm going to do with this, I'm just going to throw it in my compost bin when I'm through with all of these. But I'm going to come out with a really nice dark liquid. You can see some of it in there. And I'm going to come out with at least half a jar of that. Now, if you have a cool, dark place to store it, you can just leave it in a mason jar. A colored jar would be slightly better, but if it's going to be, say, inside a cabinet where it's always dark anyway, then this will be just fine. What I like to do, I usually make a big batch, and so I'll keep the extra in the mason jar, but then I take these little tincture jars. You can see I make cute little labels. I just did these out of scrapbook paper. I'm not one of the, this is not my strength, making the cute little labels. So, and then you'll just take a funnel and pour the liquid into here. And then if I'm going to give it to my kids, I got some plant matter on that. I'm going to have to, anyway, then I'll just give them a dropper full or 2, depending on how sick they are, and I'll give it every few hours. And then I have a small collection of these in my pantry that I go to whenever my kids are sick. So that's really handy. If you're going to use it for yourself, then you could just take a couple of teaspoons at a time, or even a tablespoon at a time. And you may just want to keep it in something like this, or you could buy a large brown or blue jar like this online. You can get them pretty cheap. I always prefer glass. It's just better. And you can get some that don't have the droppers if you're going to just be pouring it into a spoon. That's not the important part. The important part is knowing how to cook it and how to do the glycerin and the distilled water, and then you just strain it and separate it and you're good to go. These will last a good 2 to 3 years if you store them in a cool, dark location. So I really hope that you've learned a lot. I hope you see how really easy this is, and anybody can do it. I was scared off of doing this for years, and then once I finally tried it, then I was sold. I used to go to the health food store, and a bottle this size would cost me a good $20. So yeah, up front you're gonna have to buy some bulk herbs and some glycerin, so you're gonna put out a little bit of money up front, but in the long run you're gonna be saving yourself tons of money by making your own tinctures. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me or leave a comment. And I really hope this has been educational for you and helped you to see how easy it really is. Again, my website is essentialsforhealthylivingwithmindy.com, and be sure to check back on my YouTube page, because I like to post educational videos to help everyone learn. So if you have any suggestions or things you'd like me to teach on, then let me know. And I will chat with you later. Thanks, and God bless.